Okay. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, wherever you may happen to be. I'm here. I'm Tad. I'm here. What more do you want? I fully realize there may be some people who are going, what we want is less Tad. But that this is a relatively free internet still. You can do something else if you want. If you're going to stick with this, you are going to be here with me for a little while I read some more of the closing chapters of The Dirty Streets of Heaven, which is exactly where we are. We are in the closing chapters now. I'm not quite sure how many there are left, but maybe like three. We're down to the last percentage of the. Oops, I don't want that one. What are we actually at here? We are at page 400 of 443. So we're getting down near the ending. And this, of course, raises questions about what to do next, but I'm not going to worry about that tonight. Just a quick update on life at the old Bar Beal Williams Ranch, which is not much to report, or at least nothing negative. Dogs still pretty much in the same state that they were in last week. I have committed daybed there in the background, which is one of the two things that I needed to do before I could finalize fixing up the office. The other one is bookcases. I think I have some in the garage, but there has been so much stuff shoved in front of them that I cannot get to them to look and see if they're actually in functional shape. Going into that garage, now everything is now pressed to one side. So half of the garage is actually very clean at the moment, or comparatively very clean and orderly and tidy. But the other half of the garage has everything shoved into it, which is like bookcases, my giant stuffed gorilla, various musical instruments that have been left with us by various people, young people mostly, boxes upon boxes of truly mysterious contents because they've been shifted around so many times that the labels are now hidden, and all they are just flat cardboard or flat plastic, giving no details of what might be inside. So with the plastic ones, you can sometimes tell, but the cardboard ones, no. So that's going to be my next project, is to assault Mount Junk in the garage and see if I can get to the bookcases. So that's what I'm doing. So yes, I do have a day bed now. The cats are very happy. They like it. Yeah, that's about it in terms of exciting things. I'm working on what's actually been really useful. I mentioned last week that I had put back the publication of Splintered Sun because I wanted to spend more time on the sort of history stuff and the map, as it were, a lot of just kind of deep world building stuff that I felt I hadn't had time to do because I had jumped into the story. And of course, one of the things about these kinds of stories is that there's now, I don't know how many, 10, 11 Ostenard books of various lengths, some of them quite long, with appendices in the back. Thanks very much to all the people who've helped me over the last 10 years with those appendices. But because there are so many books and so many appendices, it's like there is a canon. There is a canon canon to Ostenard now, and I have to respect that. And because that's one of the things that got me going on it in the first place was the fact that I loved world building in many of my favorite books. And it's not just The Lord of the Rings. It's a lot of Michael Moorcock stuff, Fritz Leiber's stuff. Who else did really wonderful world building? Ursula Le Guin was a very fine world builder. Yeah, just a lot of people like that. And Fletcher Pratt, Well of the Unicorn. So that kind of stuff has always fascinated me. Lord Dunsany, too. I guess I would put The King of Elfland's Daughter in that general kind of category, although it's not as heavy on details and facts as, say, Tolkien or others, but it still creates a world that you come to feel, within the bounds of suspended disbelief that this is real. So I And I've said jokingly, I don't know how many years I have left that I can keep writing. I hope it's quite a few. I'm feeling fine. There's no secret messages here. And I feel like I'm still writing, as well as I ever did. Although I am definitely older and crankier than I was when I started out. But all of that said, it's very important to me that, especially the Ostenard books, since there's so many of them now, that the world building is consistent and that the level of world building is consistent. So it's not just the facts themselves, but the amount of information that is contained without disrupting the story elements is, I think, part of what people like about my work, I think. And although I couldn't prove that, that certainly seems to be one of the things that I see as a common thread running through the occasional complimentary remark about my writing. So that being the case, I do want to continue that, and I want to make sure that I'm giving people what they expect when they buy one of my books, which is not to say that I won't prioritize the other stuff, the characters, the plotting, the dialogue, all that kind of stuff. Of course, that's equally important, but the world building in particular was kind of, I felt, lagging behind a little bit due to my concerns about lack of time, and that's one of the reasons that I've changed it. So the reason I started this entire diatribe here was because that's what I've been doing for the last week and a half, and it's really entertaining. It's like going back to the earliest days of Ostenard, which were 40 years ago, which is that I'm literally just making notes all over the place, and I'm finding little bits and snips and snaps, and I'm making up names for things, and then I'm checking them to see if there's a real world analog that can kind of tell me if that seems right or not, and et cetera, et cetera. And frankly, it's more fun than writing. I hate to say it because I know people will go like, "Oh my God, how can you say that? You're an artist." But it is. It's that's always the danger with research, and I think anybody else out there who's a writer, especially a writer of fantasy fiction, will tell you, or science fiction, that the lure of research is always very powerful. And of course, it is more fun than the grind of actually having to put words on paper. Especially when you're doing that every day and that's your job. It begins to seem like a job, whereas research oftentimes seems like a vacation. It's like when your boss comes in and says, "Hey, I need somebody to go to this conference," and it's kind of wacky and silly, but, it's, 5 days out of town and we'll pay for everything and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yes. And that's how I am when it's time to do research. So I've just been happier than a pig in something unpleasant all week doing this stuff, and I've got like multiple but multiple printed copies of various maps that don't have labels on them, so I can try things and all of that, and lists of characters and their histories and the history of the country itself. And then I realized I have to write histories for these missing sections that correspond with what was happening in the country that is the focus of what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera. If anybody wants to hear more about it sometime, I'd be happy to talk about it. But right now I'm going to get on with reading in just a minute. However, first, so anyway, that's essentially the nub of what, that's a weird word, but that is the nub of what I wanted to tell you, which is having fun doing the research, and it will ultimately definitely benefit the book. I can feel it already. And that the dogs are okay. Neither of them has fanged each other. They have not been mutually fanging. Or even growling or anything. And Johnny is kind of like, just let me stay away from this crazy young dog. And the crazy young dog is like very interested in Johnny and wants to do something. But since we can't figure out what that something is that she wants to do, we're still taking it very slow. So anything else? No, Deborah is working on her various fabric art projects, including a beautiful thing that she just finished for some of my family members. And I'm sure she will share that online at a time that is appropriate if she hasn't already. She's just finished. I believe. I actually may not even be 100% finished, but I think she just finished. Yeah, so that's what's going on. We're all well at the moment, and yeah, nothing much else to say. So let me see who has showed up. And I see Tracy McClatchy has, and Maria Jose, and Ivan. Ivanushka. Hello, Ivan. Good to see you, buddy. That's my buddy Ivan. Chris Fobb. Chris, thank you so much for the marzipan. I was going to write an email, but as long as you're here, I'm going to just say it to you. Thank you so much for the marzipan. I am down to my last few pieces, as you can see here. I assume you can see. Yes, I'm down to my last few pieces. I don't know how fast Deborah's eating hers, but I've been scarfing mine at a fierce rate. So thank you so much. That was very kind of you and very thoughtful. All right, let me see. Who else have I not said hello to? Nikki Chetwin. Hello, Nikki. Good to see you. Christina, a pleasure as always. Wouter, same thing. Good to have you with us. Iris, same. Mr. Mark, there's Mark Craigbaum, my buddy, and a very talented guy himself. Nikki, hello, Nikki. Good to see you. I'm assuming it's Nikki. Did I ask you this before, if it was Nikki or Nisi? N-I-C-I. I'm going to say Nikki for now. Tell me if I'm wrong. Daniela. I think that might be a new name. So if so, hello, Daniela. If not, and I've just forgotten, remember, I am extremely old and I'm allowed to forget things. Nicole, good to see you as always. Mark Redmond, same. And Christy Sanders, hello. Let me see what people have checked in to say. And there's Ilva too. Hello, darling. Good to see you. Mark says, world building equals Le Guin equals always coming home. Yeah, good recommendation. I'm sure I left a zillion people out who were influential to me in world building. Gene Wolfe, another master, an absolute master. That's, again, just a few off the top of my head. So, just having checked in now, I think I'm going to start reading. It's about time. I can hear people say, about time, Tad. So, let me briefly bring you up to date. For if you have not had a chance yet to hear the preceding episode, what pretty much happened was, as Bobby was having a painful goodbye with Kaz, where she was basically saying to him, look, this is all in your head. We were never going to have a relationship. We were never going to be anything other than a moment, etc., etc. And he followed her out to where she was meeting Eligor to go away with him from the hotel. And she gave him her locket, the locket that had been a prized possession of hers ever since her husband back in 400 years ago in Poland, I believe, had killed her lady's maid, who had been one of her favorite people and one of the only ones she trusted. So she's worn that in a locket around her neck ever since because it was important to her, even though it burned her, because it's silver and she is in hell and a demon even when she's out of hell. So anyway, and then they took off, and as Bobby is standing there or just heading back into the hotel, the bomb goes off. And Eligor has blown up his own hotel. From that point on, everything becomes very chaotic. People are trying to get out. People are dead. The downstairs is full of smoke and debris and fire and all this stuff. And Bobby goes to find Sam. He does. He and Sam are being pursued by some of Eligor's hired guns. And they escape the hotel, steal a boat from the Ralston Hotel's dock, and escape out onto the bay. But they are pursued by Howlingfell and a bunch of other armed thugs, and who have the other boat that belongs to the hotel. And so they are heading for the land. They're being shot at. The other boat has spotlights, etc., etc. And in the course of trying to get to land, they crash into something, and their boat is wrecked. The other boat comes in behind them, and Howlingfell jumps onto their boat And that was basically where the last chapter ends. And Howlingfell is gloating over him and the terrible things that are going to happen to Bobby. And Howlingfell has a gun, and Bobby's gun is empty. Or at least it's been knocked away from him, so he can't reach it. So that's where we are. Sam was down in the hold working with the engine, and Bobby is up on the deck, and that's where we're at. Okay, so chapter 36, Departed This Earth. So there I was, doing what comes naturally, dripping wet, on my hands and knees with a gun against my neck, surrounded by the lights of Howlingfell's nearby boat and the worried shouts of his men, who seemed to be dealing with a fairly large hull breach of their own. Even though my head had slammed into the wall thingy above the steps leading down to the cabin, and now felt like a beach ball full of sand and broken glass, I still couldn't help noticing a weird noise close behind me. Howlingfell noticed it too, and although he still held the gun against the knob of my spine, I felt the pressure ease just a little as he turned to look behind him. I know, I should have heroically leaped to my feet and punched his lights out in this moment of distraction, but to be honest, I wasn't exactly sure where my feet were. But I did crane my neck so I could look too. A big shape came trudging up the steps from the cabin below, and for a brief, happy moment, I thought it was Sam. It wasn't. It was one of Howlingfell's men, but he was making a strange gargling sound that didn't quite form words. As he rose into the light, I could see he was struggling with something. One more wobbly step, and I saw the gaff hook through his throat, the long handle banging against his chest as he struggled to pull the barbed metal out of his neck. "Shit," was the only comment Howlingfell had time for. Then Sam came up the steps behind the gaffed guard and shoved him out onto the deck, where he fell beside me and lay twitching, still trying to get that hook out of his neck. It would all have been great, except Sam's hands were up, and they were both empty of firearms. Howlingfell swung the gun away from me and pointed it at Sam. Elgore's men may have wanted me alive, but I was pretty sure that wasn't true for my buddy, so I did the only thing I could manage while down on my hands and knees. I slammed my thick, useless head right into Howlingfell's gut. He stumbled back against the rail, and the gun flew up as he squeezed the trigger. The bang so close to my face that for a second I thought he'd blown my head off, but the shot hadn't hit anything. Sam took a step over the dying guy, and because he couldn't get close enough to do anything else, gave Howlingfell a hard shove in the chest that sent him over the rail and into the estuary. Sam dragged me to my feet. I spotted my gun and lunged for it just before my buddy climbed over the rail and jumped into the dark water. They're on the bay, by the way. This is San Francisco Bay where this is happening, down at the far, far, far southern-y end. Not all the way down, but way down from San Francisco. I could hear Howlingfell thrashing nearby, but couldn't see him. I squeezed a shot off in his direction anyway, and then, just for good measure, shot one of the nearest moving shapes on the brightly lit boat, sending it spinning down to the deck. "Tell the boss we need backup," I heard Howlingfell screech past a mouthful of dirty water and weeds. Then I followed Sam over the side toward the shore. How many shots did I have left? Probably 2 or 3, and that was going to be it. My pockets were empty. The loose silver shells gone now, just so many expensive, shiny pebbles sinking to the estuary mud or rolling across the deck of the ruined cabin cruiser. I hoped that at least one of Howley's men might step on one and slip and break his neck. The water was cold and muddy and just disgusting, but in that moment of unexpected freedom, it felt like the finest spa treatment ever as we swam and sloshed and splashed toward the bank in its thicket of reeds. We had slipped beyond the glare of their lights, and I could hear the shouts behind us turning to panicky rage as the guards realized their leader was in the water and we were gone. The footing was terrible, slippery mud and tangles of roots, but we pushed and shoved and dug our way forward through the close-packed reeds like we were still swimming. A couple of shots snapped past us, and I realized we were probably creating a visible trail of thrashing stems, So I grabbed at Sam's collar and whispered for him to slow down. A few more shots cracked the night, but none of them came close enough to make me nervous. We hunkered down until only our heads were above the water and kept going. Something close to half an hour later, we abandoned the reeds at last and collapsed in exhaustion on a bare, muddy lump of exposed ground. The moon looked down with its usual magnificent unconcern as we coughed and spat out water, and only the highest knew what other muck, then spent several more minutes just trying to get air back into our lungs. At last I sat up and made a quick inventory. Wet shoes, wet pants, wet jacket. One gun with 3 bullets in the pipe and a few more that had stuck in my pockets. The rest had fallen out into the ooze during our escape. It took me long moments to make my cold, slippery fingers work well enough to hand-load these extras, but I now had half a dozen $15 silver rounds in my gun. It would have been cheaper to throw bottles of Chivas Regal at them. No other weapons, and no cell phone. Mine had tumbled out of my pocket with the extra bullets. I turned to Sam. "Do you still have your phone?" He spat. It didn't make it off his chin. He finally rubbed it away with his muddy arm, which left him looking like a war-painted otter. "No. Fucking thing popped out somewhere along the parade route. My gun, too. You still have that plastic piece of shit you got from Orban?" I showed him the 5.7. "Well, that's something anyway," he said. "I got nothing but a flashlight and a headache. And we'd better start walking. Which way?" He climbed to his knees, then cautiously lifted himself enough to look around. Other than the massive power pylons looming on either side of us, and the dark wires that sagged between them like scratches across the face of the moon, there were no landmarks that I recognized except the faint dark outline of Shoreline Park looming out of the bay a short distance south of us. "We're only a couple of miles from my place," Sam said. "We can probably get there from here without being spotted, and I've got a fucking armory hidden under the floorboards for just this kind of evening's entertainment." "Go." I didn't have the energy to wait any longer. I knew if I didn't get moving soon, I'd forget how it all worked. I hadn't been hit by any bullets, but I felt like someone had taken a piece of pipe to me and shifted a few things around in my torso and head. Pretty good. Liked the gaff hook, by the way. I guess the Ralston does fishing charters. Darn nice hotel. Yeah, well, they won't be doing any for a while because we just sank both their boats. It was a long, slow trek by moonlight over the squelching ground and watery ruts, through pickleweed and salt grass and all kinds of other stuff that naturalists love, but which is pure hell to wade through when your body's covered in bloody scrapes. As we got closer to the end of the nature preserve, I could see a few fluorescents burning in an office complex that backed onto the slough we were currently following. This tiny hint of civilization cheered me, but there was no way I wanted to go near that much light until we were almost at Sam's front door. He finally led us over a little bridge that crossed the slough and into a tidy little park. By the way, I know it can also be pronounced slough, so I'm just choosing a pronunciation. The moonlight picked out picnic tables and a kiddie area with a slide and some swings. "Garcia Park," Sam said. "We're close. We won't even have to go near a main road. There's a cemetery on the far side of this, then it's only a hop and a skip across the fields to my place." "Do you see me hopping or skipping?" I asked, tired and sore beyond belief. But his mention of the cemetery had reminded me of one of the odder things Fatback had told me about the real Reverend Habari he'd found, and that made me quiet again. The park was a small one, and before too long we were laboriously climbing over the iron pickets that fenced the cemetery. "I remember this place," I said, as we made our way between the monuments. The graveyard had gone more than a little to seed. It looked like the last time anyone had mowed the grass might have been last fall, and the only flowers were plastic, fake as tinsel even by moonlight. "You used to hang out here a lot," I said. "I even came with you a couple times." Sam was silent for a few steps. "Drinking days," he said at last. "Yeah, I killed a few bottles out here. Helps a man keep things in perspective. Cemeteries or empty bottles? Both. I didn't point out to my buddy that he wasn't actually a man and hadn't been one for some time, if ever. None of us earthbound angels likes being reminded. Instead, I was trying to recall exactly what Fatback had told me. Southeast corner? As best I could tell, that seemed to be where we were headed, but it was another reason to miss my phone and all my notes. Hey, let me have the flashlight, will you? Sam gave me a strange look. What the hell do you want it for? We're trying to keep a low profile out here. Just something I was thinking about. Come on, we haven't heard a whisper of those guys in an hour. He reluctantly handed it over. It was a small light and not likely to give us away, but I kept it pointed near the ground anyway, sliding the dim beam across the headstones as we made our way over the untended lawn, much of which was more dirt than grass, a few yellowing strands still holding on to the edge of the bald patches like columns of repeating troops. Bobby, the light, you're worrying me. I started to respond, but something had caught my eye. I cut left and began walking toward it. Sam called that I was going in the wrong direction, but I wasn't listening. He trotted after me. Bobby, what the hell? Hell is not the location I'm interested in right now. What are you talking about? He said, but he didn't sound good. What? He didn't get a chance to finish his question because the distant noise that had been building for the last few seconds was now too loud to ignore. Helicopter, he said in precisely the way Captain Hook would have said, crocodile. I killed the light and we both threw ourselves to the ground, huddling face down and hoping, I suppose, that we would look like loose boulders. Excuse me, I'll try that one again. I killed the light and we both threw ourselves to the ground, huddling face down and hoping, I suppose, that we would look like loose boulders in the middle of the churchyard. The stick in the spokes noise got louder until the thing seemed to be right above our heads. A light stabbed down from it and swept one way across the cemetery grounds, then the other, but it didn't touch us. I know because I peeked. The helicopter continued on past and I could see the beam reaching down here and there, but farther away each time. I got up when I couldn't hear the chopper blades anymore and turned the light back on, then found what had caught my eye. After I had been standing there looking at it for long moments without saying anything, Sam clambered to his feet and limped over to stand beside me. What's up, Bobby? He asked, but he sounded like he knew. He sounded like the guy who says, how long do I have, Doc, when he already knows the answer is not long. I let the beam play up and down the headstone. There really wasn't any need to say anything, or at least I didn't think so. The words were old and weather-worn, but still quite legible even by the weak beam of Sam's flashlight. Moses Isaac Habari, born January 14th, 1928, departed this earth May 20th, 2004. Father, brother, pastor, man of peace. I turned and looked at Sam, but he just stared at the tombstone. How did you know? Was all he said. The sound was faint as a whisper, but because it came in the silence after Sam spoke, a silence in which 100 different things I might say were swirling in my head, it was loud enough to startle. I turned just in time to see a half-dozen figures loping toward us from about 100 yards away across the cemetery. Discussion time over. We ran, but we were already exhausted, wet, beaten, and bruised. Before we had gone 10 steps, shots were whip-cracking all around us. Our pursuers had lights on their guns this time, and every time I swerved, at least a couple of them tracked me. I followed Sam, hoping he knew this place well enough to find us an escape route, or at least a place to make a stand. But although we crested a rise and saw we had almost reached the end of the cemetery, this part didn't have an iron fence, but a high memorial wall made of stone. It looked big and strong enough to stop anything short of a grenade launcher, but We were on the wrong side of it for a standoff. In fact, it looked a lot more like the kind of place a firing squad takes you just before they offer you the cigarette. "What the hell?" I gasped. "Sorry," was all Sam said, but we were already stumbling downhill, the wall looming in front of us, and I had to slow down so suddenly I almost ran into the list of carved names of dozens of folk, probably soldiers, who might have faced last moments much like this one. I spun and squeezed off around. 5 left. But the men chasing us had already taken protected positions behind the headstones. None of them was more than a dozen yards away, and 4 or 5 beams converged on us like the end of a failed prison break from some old comedy film. "There's nowhere to go, Dollar." "Drop dead, Howley," I shouted. "You probably said that last time, too." But I couldn't muster much bravado while we were making such an attractive, easy target. "Throw down your gun or I'll blow the shit out of your friend Samariel, and you'll still be in as much trouble as you already were." "Don't do it," Sam said quietly. "Not many alternatives as far as I can see." I held the gun up and showed it to him, then dropped it into the grass. At Howling Fell's urging, I kicked it several yards away. Once he was satisfied, he shouted for us to get down with our hands behind our heads and stay that way. I was flat out of ideas, so I did what he said, wondering if I would at least get a chance to stick a finger in one of his squinty little eyes before Eligor's crew started working on me for real. Sam let himself down beside me, heavy and slow. "You got another gaff hook in that coat?" I whispered. "Not even a safety pin," he said. "You shouldn't have given up your gun, Bobby." "Yeah, well, you seriously owe me a bunch of explanations." I kept it quiet because Howling Fell was moving toward us. "And I'm not going to let anyone shoot you until I get him." But it was all bullshit, of course. We'd managed to catch Howley and his men by surprise once, maybe even twice if you counted going for the boat in the first place. But although we'd proved Eligor's enforcer could be tricked, he wouldn't fall for the same trick twice, and I was fresh out of new ones. As if to demonstrate his newfound caution, Howling Fell came toward us almost crabwise, with his gun pointing right at me, and stopped when he was still 6 feet away. A man's height. The depth of a grave. "No more bullshit from you," he said. "No more smart talk. Thought it was funny shooting me in the nuts that time, did you?" "Subtle," I said, "but hilarious, yes." "Fuck you, little man. You won't be laughing much longer. Do you know what Grasswax said, even after we'd cut out half the shit in his body and showed it to him?" Howling Fell made his voice whiny. "I can still feel it." That's what he said. Talk about hilarious. "Don't squeeze, it still hurts." And those guts weren't even connected to him anymore. That's what Eligor's special doctors can do. He smirked, the gun still pointed at my throat. "The boss promised I could have a front row seat for your show, and I'm going to enjoy every moment." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone, but the gun never moved, and he was out of my reach anyway. He flipped it open like it was some kind of Star Trek communicator and thumbed a button. While he was waiting, he turned to his men behind the tombstones who were still pinning us with their lights. "When I'm out of the way, you can blow the big one to ribbons," he called. "Use the darts on the smaller one." Someone must have picked up on the other end of the call because he suddenly dropped his voice to something several shades more submissive. "Boss?" he said to the phone. "Yeah, it's me. Mission accomplished." We don't always get a chance to pick our last words wisely, but I hope when my time comes, I'll have better luck than that. No sooner had Howley snapped the phone shut and begun to back out of the way when something came over the wall from behind us and hopped down like a monstrous black toad, landing in a crouch just in front of me and Sam. I could feel the heat radiating from it immediately, But I had only an instant to see the horribly familiar spreading black horns and the black alien shagginess of its face as it looked around, blue flames pluming from its nostrils. Then someone behind one of the headstones opened fire. I threw myself to the side and hugged the earth as bullets spattered off the memorial wall. Some of them must have hit the Galoo, but I knew already it didn't give a toss about anything but silver, and it didn't mind silver much more than I would an uncomfortable sunburn. To his credit, Howling Fell was not going to lose his prize without a fight. He stepped toward the thing with his gun raised and started squeezing off shots in quick succession, half a dozen, the ejected shells winking in the moonlight as they spun through the air and fell to the sparse grass. Then he took one step too many, and despite all the rounds he had fired at it, the horned thing seemed to notice him for the first time. Two steaming slate-black hands, big as shovels, snapped out and folded around his arms, then jerked him off the ground. For a moment, Howling Fell fought back, thrashing and shouting in the creature's grasp as smoke rose where it clutched him. Then the Galoo's jaws unhinged. There's no other word, gaping impossibly, hideously wide, exposing flames like a crematory oven. I only had time for one horrified look before it shoved Howling Fell's screeching head and then his shoulders into that dreadful fire. His legs kicked pointlessly as the monster sucked the round bit with a face on it right off the end of his spine, then spit the charred lump onto the ground before flinging Howling Fell's slack, boneless body out into the darkness beyond the lights. Guns were flashing and cracking now, automatic fire, and even as I scrabbled wildly on the ground for my automatic, I saw the Galoo lunge toward the place where all the guns were blazing. My hand closed on something hard, but it was only Howling Fell's phone. I held on to it and kept groping desperately until I finally found my gun. Howley's men probably shouldn't have fired at the Galoo. Apparently it was prone to distraction. The demon thing was among them in a second, tearing Howling Fell's enforcers into pieces and flinging those pieces so violently in all directions that I could feel spatters of warm blood even as I smelled burning flesh. I stuck the phone in my pocket so I could hold my gun in both hands, which was necessary because I was shaking like a chihuahua in the snow. But I didn't fire. No way was I going to stand and try to shoot it out again with this thing that swallowed even silver bullets like Tic Tacs. But I couldn't really think of anything else to do either. "Bobby, here!" Sam was waving frantically from the far end of the wall. I put my head down and ran toward him, more worried about getting hit by a stray shot than by design, because the Terminator from the Tigress was shredding the guards he'd reached, and though the rest were still firing at the monster as they ran away, it was with a distinct lack of conviction, let alone careful aim. "This way!" Sam called, already in a flat-out sprint and making pretty damn good time if he was as exhausted as I was. "That big fucker doesn't know what side it's on, does it? I guess your headless friend didn't get exactly the kind of backup he was hoping for. As far as Eligor's concerned, they're all disposable," I panted. "As for Howling Fell, I hope he's back home roasting on the tiles of hell right now, but he's no longer our problem. That thing, it isn't going to stop until it catches me. And once it finishes barbecuing Howley's men, it's going to be right behind us." I wheezed and coughed, staggered, and almost fell. Too much talking. "Yeah, I remember that thing from before. Faster than your fucking car, wasn't it?" This deserved no answer, so I continued saving my breath as we sprinted out the Memorial Park gate and across a winding road. I hadn't run this much in years, and I hadn't been to the gym much either. I was in bad shape, for an angel anyway, and I hoped I'd live to start taking better care of myself. We also seemed to be heading out toward the bay again. From the cemetery, I heard one last scream of despair, a ragged sound that might have been someone beating a set of bagpipes to death with a spiked club. "Where?" I managed to gasp at Sam. "The only place we have a chance," he said between breaths, now sparing with the oxygen himself. Footbridge, out to Shoreline Park. He looked back. I didn't, but whatever he saw there made him find a new gear he may not even have known he had. I did my best to stay right behind him. But who was I behind exactly? The Sam I'd thought I knew. My best friend would never have kept anything really big for me. And this Habari stuff was bigger than big. Could I even trust him again? More important, could I stay ahead of that smoldering hell thing long enough to find out? We reached the footbridge, a narrow span with chest-high railings made for bicyclists and day hikers that stretched over the marshlands like a yardstick balanced between the island and the shore. Our footsteps made it rumble and quiver. Then something howled in the distance behind us, loud enough to shake down the moon. I suspected my nemesis had just discovered that its quarry had skipped out again. The Galu bayed once more, a sound that made the air pop in my ears. Then I almost lost my footing as the sturdy little bridge began to groan and shake like 7 on the Richter scale. The hot thing with horns was coming after us, thundering down the bouncing footbridge like a real freight train on a toy track. The only real question was how far across we'd get before it caught us. Chapter 37, Faith. Halfway across the bridge, and I could already feel the heat of the thing against my back, despite the chilly bay breeze. Sam was a couple of steps ahead of me, but I'm sure he could feel it too. The Galu was maybe 40 or 50 feet back and closing fast, hindered only by the narrowness of the footbridge. It would catch us long before we got to the island side. Time for plan B. Only problem was I didn't have one. But the thing didn't like water, right? And here we were running a few feet above San Francisco Bay. I seriously considered just diving over the railing into the shallow tidal inlet in the hope we could save ourselves that way, but I had no idea how deep the water was, perhaps only a few feet, and how much the creature actually disliked H2O, and I wasn't keen on finding out both things when it was too late to try anything else. I put on a burst of speed and caught up with Sam. "I'm going to try something," I said, or tried to through my gasps for breath. "Whatever you do, don't stop running." To his credit, or as evidence of how fucked we were, Sam didn't even argue, but only lowered his head and tried to coax another few mph out of his legs. I snuck a glance back over my shoulder and saw that the monster was far enough behind us for me to turn and drop into a shooter's crouch, which I did. The 5.7 is a light gun, but I took a shooter's stance and braced it with my other hand because I was trembling so damn hard. Then did my best to draw a bead on one of those 2 fiery red eyes coming toward me like the headlights of some hell truck. Silver might not kill it, but I was wondering what it might think about getting a bullet-sized chunk of the stuff right in the eye, and maybe, if I was lucky, right through and into whatever served it as a brain. But I wasn't lucky. The thing didn't slow down, and its footsteps made the slats of the old bridge jump and shake beneath me as I squeezed the trigger. The Galu straightened up as I fired. My gun jounced low, and instead of giving it one in the eyeball, I saw a fiery gout of something burst out near its knee. The Galu lurched and lost its rhythm for a second, throwing back its head as it staggered and letting loose a rumbling sound of fury and pain, I devoutly hoped, as loud as an avalanche of scrap metal. I fired again and hit it in the chest, and it slapped at the molten wound, not mortally hurt, but pained and distracted. Then it stumbled and crashed into the railing, shattering the redwood 2x4s into splinters as it toppled, flailing into the water. As it cannonballed into the bay, a hissing cloud billowed up toward the moon and blotted my view. I stood staring for a long second, wondering if I might actually have killed it. But then the great beast staggered upright, water bubbling violently off its skin and fizzing into steam. The brackish water barely reached the Galu's knees, and it was already wading back toward the footbridge like a ground-hugging cloud. It roared again, This time it sounded like it was spitting out bay water, but that didn't make the noise any prettier. I was already sprinting after Sam as the horned cloud began to climb back onto the flimsy bridge where it had broken through. When I looked back, the broken boards were smoldering in its clawed hands. Then a moment later, a long section of the railing simply broke away, and the creature slipped back into the shallow water. It hissed and slashed at the unresisting tide with its hands and horns, then waded sullenly forward, looking for a better place to climb out so it could catch us and shred us. So much for killing it with the San Francisco Bay. Still, the beast clearly didn't like water, and enough of the stuff might at least take away much of its heat. Any pain it caused the Galu would be a bonus. Maybe it would even make the monster more vulnerable to silver. Yeah, I thought, and maybe astronauts and cowboys will appear and save me. I had 2, maybe 3 of my expensive bullets left, so all I could do was try to think of some way to improve the odds a little and hope that fate was done rubbing little Bobby Dollar's face in his own stupidity. A few moments later, with the steaming horror still dragging its bulk back onto the bridge, we were off the walkway and into the ruins of Shoreline Park. We dashed up the little promenade between the dilapidated shells of what had once been restaurants and shops meant to lure the park's customers before they even reached the main events. Some abandoned amusement parks have an eerie, haunted charm as nature, in the form of trees and vines, reclaims them, climbing over the skeletal rides, transforming them into a modern version of a Victorian folly, an artistic comment on the frailty of man's works. The commentary on Shoreline Park was a little less subtle. In the years since the park closed down for good, it had become a wasteland in every sense of the word. A haven for seabirds, crackheads, and any homeless folk who could manage the hike from the mainland and didn't mind living with broken glass and sharp, rusted things underfoot. The walls that still stood were splashed with graffiti, both the formal tags of local gangs and others so crude and desperate that they looked more like the markings of animals. Spray paint splattered mindlessly, like blood and vomit. Both of which were also splattered here, as my senses forcefully told me. A little patch of hell on earth. Nice place to make a last stand. Sam had slowed, and I joined him in a heavy, painful trot. Even our angelic bodies were pretty nearly tapped out. "Which way?" I gasped. "I don't know. I can't take you where I was going to. That thing's too close." He looked blank and strange. I couldn't even guess at what he was thinking. We had been like brothers, Sam and I, or at least I had thought so. Now I realized I scarcely knew him. How had we come to this? Sam pointed off to the right. "Woods are over there," he said, meaning the southern part of the island, the original turn-of-the-century park before the amusements were built, once a spot for picnics and family outings. "And the parking lot," he said absently, as if trying to remember where we had left our car. "Two good places to get slaughtered," I said between ragged breaths, "but not what I was hoping for." I wiped sweat out of my eyes and looked ahead to the amusement park section. Maryland, as it had been officially named, although no one had called it that for a long time before Shoreline Park actually closed. All I could see of it from here was the top of the Whirlaway and the wheel, but that was enough. The idea of trying to hide from a murderous Sumerian demon amidst that wreckage might have thrilled a movie's art director, but it left me cold. Not to mention it would take us another 5 minutes or more to reach it, time I didn't think we could afford. I pointed to our left, beyond the row of ruined storefronts. "Are the Bass still over there on the north side?" The howl of the demonic thing pursuing us rose into the darkness behind us once more. Even after all this time, that sound grabbed me by my primordial short hairs, and I could almost feel the last drops of my courage leaking out. "Sam?" "Yeah, but I don't know if there's any water in them." "Then start praying." I darted down a narrow alley full of broken, rusted chairs and bits of fallen masonry that the Bay Area had spent busy years covering in mold. I ran as fast as I could manage for the Kingsport Plunge, the abandoned swimming complex where flappers and their straw-hatted swains had once come to sun and swim beside the bay. We emerged from the shelter of the ruined buildings, and the moon dripped enough light for us to make our way between the long abandoned spa pools, just so many empty cups now, with scummy water and debris littering their bottom like tea leaves waiting to be read. A few more steps and I could make out the shadowy lip of the outdoor pool, a concrete pit the size of a football field. Once, diving towers, lifeguard stations, and refreshment stands had stood around it like Renaissance towns around a lake. But time and weather had swept them all away. Now only the outdoor plunge itself remained, a Bauhaus Grand Canyon made of cement. But as we reached the side, I could see there was nothing in the bottom of it but 1.5 feet of rainwater and a graveyard of rusted poolside recliners. Well, that was just wonderful. Maybe the Galu would step on something nasty while it was eating us and get tetanus. The indoor pools, Sam panted. If you want water, I think they're still fed from the bay. Maybe someone left the sluices open. Just then I heard a sound like bombs going off and turned. The monster had climbed onto one of the shops behind us, smashing the remnants of its roof as it scrambled toward the edge. It saw us then and leaped down as quickly as a cat, if cats came in combine harvester size, then began to close the ground between us, leaping over the cement pits of the empty therapy pools. Nobody had bothered to put a lock on the indoor pool, and we slammed through the door and into the echoing space. The reason it was open quickly became apparent. It might have been an indoor pool once, but the roof had been made of something less permanent than the walls and had long since rotted away. The ceiling was nothing but a basket of rusted metal spars, completely open to the sky. But even so, the place still stank of urine and human feces and rotting dead things. Even as we ran across the slippery tiles, I saw that for once fate had smiled on me, or at least not simply flipped me the bird. As Sam had guessed, there was water in the indoor pool, gleaming darkly where the moon touched it through the tangle of rusted struts. In fact, the pool was nearly full. But the moon wasn't the only thing above us. A large shadow appeared at the edge of the roof and sprang down, less like a cat or a toad this time than like something with lots of legs dropping onto its prey. It crouched in the shadows, temporarily shapeless, but I could see the burning eyes, and it could just as obviously see me. Then Sam slipped and fell, cracking his head hard against the floor, and before I could slide to a stop, struggling to keep my balance on the filthy, muddy tiles, I was 12 feet past him. Sam lay on the ground, not moving. The Galu came toward us with horns down and arms spread. I wasn't sure how many shells I might have left in my gun, 2, maybe 3, if I was lucky, but I stepped toward the thing. "Hey, you! Ugly!" I shouted. "You don't want him! You want me!" It actually stopped, tipping its wide-pronged head like a dog. "Come on, try me, you ancient bastard! Come and taste the 21st century!" It sprang over Sam as if it had meant to do that in the first place. Something that big should never be that fast. Never. I realized it was going to be on me before I could even get traction again, so I fired. With no time for careful placement, I just aimed at the shadowy center of it and pulled the trigger, then squeezed off another for good measure. I saw both bullets hit, and the thing shuddered as the silver pierced it, slowing its loping progress to a stumble. Sprays of molten orange leaped like sunspots from its torso, but the bullets didn't kill it any more than meteors would kill the sun. All that those shots did for me was allow me time to get my feet under me again so I could scramble toward the dark indoor plunge and leap in. Sam had been right about another thing. The pool was full of salt water from the bay, but that wasn't all. left open to the elements, and only the highest could guess what other kinds of filth. The water smelled like sewage and clung like oil. Floating branches and other debris tangled my arms as I swam. I wasted no time on the aesthetics, but paddled as fast as I could to the deep end, where the chipped tile still faintly read 12. 12 feet, I hope, not lane 12 or something equally useless. When I got there, I turned, treading water, trying to keep my gun out of the muck, and waited. I didn't wait long. Growling and rumbling, the huge thing scrabbled along the side of the pool for a moment, as if gauging whether it could reach me from there, then leaped into the murky water. A geyser of steam vomited into the air. It was fast in the water, too. It came toward me like a shark, just a dark bulge beneath the water's surface. To my horror, I learned that simply because something hates water doesn't mean it can't swim. Instead of staying and waiting for it, I dove down and felt the creature pass just above me in a wave of scalding heat and furiously bubbling froth, its flames doused, but its skin still hot as a branding iron. The Galu turned then and dug back toward me, too far up for me to slip past it to the surface. I did my best to ignore the foul water burning my eyes as I tried to kick out of the monster's way, but I wasn't fast enough, and a moment later it was right over me. I am no Olympic swimmer. My superiors gave me a good body, but not Superman's. The Galu had speed and strength far beyond any human frame, even one on loan to an angel. As I tried to dart away again, it reached out and caught me. I could feel the skin of my ankle blistering. I did my best to turn and shoot at it, hoping I had one round left and that the 5.7 would fire underwater, but some garbage floating in the pool had tangled itself with my trigger finger, and before I could get it untangled, the monster yanked me toward it and dragged me upward. It was dangling me upside down by one leg as it surfaced and thrashed its way toward the shallower end where it could stand up. The demon beast's skin was black, smooth as a dolphin's, and smelled like melting rubber and sulfur. Even soaking wet, the thing was painfully hot, and as it stood there, dripping up to its belly in the water, little flames began to run along its head and shoulders as the remaining moisture steamed away. I fought with my remaining strength, but couldn't wriggle loose. The pain of my ankle was so intense that I could only pray that there really was one bullet left, so I could put it into my own skull and end the agony. The Galu had dived into a full pool and swallowed a pound of silver and still barely broke stride. I had nothing else to try. Helpless. That's the word. But instead of ripping my head off or burning me to ashes, the Galu lifted me up and began to open its mouth, which kept opening and opening until it was a gaping hole, its distended lower jaw almost touching its chest. This time, instead of flames, I saw nothing inside it. Nothing. Not the emptiness of an open gullet, but the void itself, belching out empty, freezing cold, despite the heat of the Galu's body, a bottomless pit stinking of oblivion. And then I realized that this demon wasn't going to carry me back to Eligor. It was going to send me back. It was going to swallow me right down that horrible throat into hell. And that's where we're going to stop, because it's just about the top of the hour, and there's still lots more fun to be had, but we're going to save it for tomorrow night, or for later tonight, I should say, forgetting that not everybody is on the side of night and day that I am. So later today, 7 p.m., I will return, and we will find out what happens, if you don't already know, in Bobby's confrontation with the Galu, which is about to swallow him down its unhinged jaw down the chute to hell, and the tender ministrations of Eligor and his doctors. Anyway, with that, I will say good night for tonight, or good morning for this morning. I thank you, as always, for joining me. It is a huge pleasure to be able to share this with you. And I hope you had a good time. I sure did. I will be back, as I said, at 7 p.m. For those of you who can make it for that broadcast. If not, you can catch it on YouTube, where Chris Fobb solemnly and gracefully puts the recordings when they're finished. And until then, I ask you to please take good care of yourselves, because you are important. Take good care of your family and loved ones, of course, but keep an eye out for those around you who might also need help, even if it's just a kind word, couple of bucks to somebody forced to stand on a corner and ask for help, whatever it might be. There are a lot of people out there in the world that need help from time to time. So, peace, be well, be good, and I will see you very soon. And thank you so much. Ciao, Bambini.